we picked 5 for 25. I would have liked to have picked 10, but it didn't sound as cool. So the 5 for 25 come out of our 12 best ideas portfolio. And the first one is an AI play, but on the software side. So Amazon, that's the name that I want to talk about just briefly. If you look at the company, well, first of all, if you look at growth stocks, earnings growth for growth stocks is expected to be 16.2% next year. The earnings growth for value stocks is expected to be 9.3%. And so we want to own the companies that are generating solid high double-digit return earnings growth, and particularly because it looks like the economy slowed at least somewhat in the fourth quarter. So you remember we went into the quarter with GDP now for the fourth quarter at I think 3.2%, and the last I looked was yesterday. It was at 2.4% growth. So decent, but not super robust. And so this is when you want to own the companies that can generate earnings growth. So my favorite, and the one I'm going to spend the longest on, is Amazon, because I talked about this in a Wall Street Journal interview as our stock pick for the decade a number of years back. But you have a new CEO in Andy Jassy who got Tim cooked. So when he took over for Jeff Bezos, everyone, poo-pooed it. They sold the stock down, said he was no Jeff Bezos, which is exactly what they did with Tim Cook. He was no Steve Jobs. And Tim Cook has generated the most total return for a stock under a single CEO of any company ever. It used to be NVIDIA, and then NVIDIA sold off. But importantly, the company is growing earnings 21% in 2025, 22% in 2026, which means that on a price earnings to growth basis, so what am I paying on a price earnings basis for future growth? It's trading at 2 times in 25 and a little bit over, it's a little under 2 in 25 and a little over 1 in 26. That is not excessive valuation. They're going to spend $60 billion in in CapEx, and they're still going to have 50 billion in CapEx, and they're still going to have 60 billion in free cash flow, which is after CapEx. So the AI movement is real. They are benefiting in their cloud business as well as their advertising business, and it will continue for some time. So we still like the name very much.
It could be the Tengler 10.
Did you say Tengler?
Tengler? I didn't say detangler. I said Tengler 10. Nancy Tengler. Then Nancy Tengler 10. Say that 10 times fast.
Arthur always calls me Mrs. D. Tengler. I visited my son recently in Hawaii. He's stationed there, and the sign on his house says D. Tengler. I couldn't stop laughing. Anyway, and along the same vein as ServiceNow, it's one of our favorite names. It's been in the 12 best ideas portfolio for a very long time. One of the best CEOs in the country, Bill McDermott, and he recently, on an interview with Mornings with Maria, said that he expected AI spending to be $20 trillion between now and 2030. Think of them as the conductor and the interpreter of data flow, AI data flow on the cloud. They are, as they said recently, and we would agree, they are perfectly positioned, growing 22 to 25% annually. They have been for the last 3 years. And so this is a name you just want to buy it, put it away in your portfolio, as we've done in our 12 best ideas portfolio. Love the name, and we will continue to hold it. A new ad for us is Spotify. For a whole host of reasons. We've owned it for a really long time. We sold Facebook, Meta, and bought Spotify and felt dumb for about 5 minutes, and Spotify's just taken off. But, Arthur, ever since they've opened up the Joe Rogan podcast to other platforms, it just was a brilliant move, and it's improved their advertising business dramatically. Do you use Spotify?
Yeah, I love it.
Do you? I want to switch.
I've used it for years. I have a family plan. All the kids use it too.
Yeah, it's so much better. Sorry, Apple, than Apple Music, and yet I have Apple Music, so that's on my list of things to do this year, along with move, sell a house, that kind of stuff.
Buy a horse.
I did buy a horse this weekend. I did. He's so cute. But Spotify is last year was the year of monetization, and so the stock's up quite a bit. It was up over, I think, 100% last year, and since we've purchased it, very much more than that. But if you look at earnings growth, it's expected to be 58% this year. And then it decelerates sadly to 28% in 2026. And it's trading at a price earnings to growth ratio of 1 time. So I think this is the Netflix of music. Obviously, that's not super insightful, but we think this is a name and it's pretty recession proof because it's probably the last thing you're going to cancel of all your subscriptions in a recession or close. I don't know. Do you have Netflix, Arthur?
I do, but it's Hulu that's going to get axed first. That thing's ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, and I have YouTube TV, and it was really a great deal when it was $50 a month. It's now I think close to 90. So
Yeah. And I
I
don't
mean,
watch Disney, so I mean, like you have to get Disney and ESPN. And I mean, SEC, the SEC's almost out of football for the year. So once that national championship's over, more than likely my Hulu accounts.
that's right. I'm done. Yeah, and then the other two, I'll just say very quickly because we've talked about them before. Goldman Sachs, another member of our 12 best ideas, it got downgraded today and went up. So that's Wall Street downgrades don't really really play into price performance over the medium term and even sometimes in the short term. But M&A activity is going to increase, and this is probably the premier M&A name, not trading at a big multiple, 13.4 times. And then the last name is our poor man's NVIDIA, Broadcom. It hit the $1 trillion mark recently, and we think this party can continue for some time. Half software, half AI. But here's the best part. Hock Tan is the CEO, and he came out in the most recent earnings call and said that their incremental revenue from AI spend among existing clients, and they just added two big clients that aren't in these numbers, is 60 to 90 billion between now and 2027. So this name has a long way to go. They raised the dividend 11%. You're getting paid handsomely to wait. And so we will continue to hold this name as we have since the inception of the 12 Best Ideas portfolio.